I want to turn to Afghanistan. We heard testimony from Generals McKenzie and Milley about the withdrawal. Committee will come to order. Committee will suspend until Capitol Police escort the protesters out. And what was clear in that testimony is that Ambassador Wilson believed that we could hold on to the embassy and keep the flag flying because, in his view, he believed we could normalize relations with the Taliban. But that didn't work out so well. Now the Taliban is in control of the country, and I talked about the impact on the women and girls in that country. We have provided $2 billion since August of 2021, and SIGAR produced its report that revealed, as I feared, that U.S. cash shipments do in fact benefit the Taliban. My question is, how do you plan to revise this program to ensure the Taliban is not benefiting from this assistance? In other words, what is your alternative to cash payments?
Well, one of the reasons that the voucher system has become a system of choice in many parts of the world is we are, of course, interested in working to ensure that citizens are not dependent on humanitarian assistance. And one of the things that vouchers do is they allow markets to get created, shopkeepers to make money, goods to be procured and manufactured locally. So cash programs are an important part of the solution through vouchers, but they are also useful because vouchers allow for more transparency. You know where the money is going. So we are continually assessing our activities. As you know, we work only with trusted partners like the World Food Program, UNICEF, and others that we work with all around the world. In Afghanistan, beyond our standard rigorous controls and assurances and the requirement that every implementing partner has to report any diversion, we have independent third-party monitoring that does site visits and tries to scrutinize those transactions. Again, we've seen partners that we fund actually suspending assistance because of the diversion or because women are not allowed to be employed, depending, there's two sets of reasons to suspend. And then after conditions change, restarting assistance. So happy to work with your team.
Can I ask you about that? Because the NGOs were prohibited from hiring women. Has that changed, and what have you done to try to help change that policy?
Most of the UN, or the UN system came together and developed a set of principles whereby women had to be beneficiaries of the resources, of course, and that women aid workers had to be part of delivery. I would say the Taliban edict remains the same. Enforcement is uneven, and what our partners have done is find ways to maneuver around it so as to ensure that women continue to be part of the delivery system in some form. That doesn't always mean it is the same form in which it occurred prior to the fall of Kabul and the takeover by the Taliban.
Well, I just want to ensure that the U.S. taxpayer dollars are not directly funding the Taliban. I know you can't completely assure that, and it's troubling. We're facing a similar issue with Haiti. Until they have some form of government, it's hard to provide that assistance, as I very much know how desperately it's needed, and I'm very empathetic to the people of Haiti. Let me shift to your role as not just administrator of USAID, but you sit on the board of MCC and the Development Finance Corporation. These are the three main U.S. agencies that really can combat the malign influence of the Chinese Communist Party. You talked about this in your opening statement. We are looking at ways to be more effective against the Belt and Road policies. Can you comment on that? But specifically, we are working on a bipartisan bill to reform the Development Finance Corporation, where we can provide them with more equity so that you can have more private investment in these countries that are almost held hostage to this debt trap that you talked about that the CCP gets them into.
Thank you, and thank you for your leadership in securing the passage of the BUILD Act in the first place and putting the D in development finance in the Development Finance Corporation. We work really closely with the DFC, as I've made clear to Scott Nathan and the DFC leadership. You know, we view USAID teams all around the world. We have missions in more than 100 countries, or programs in more than 100 countries, missions in more than 80 countries. That's our ground game for deal spotting, for creating regulatory reform that makes it possible then for the private sector to come in, whether partnering with DFC or not. So we're pretty heartened by where the partnership is going. About 20% of DFC's transactions this year were supported by USAID in some fashion. I think that can be even higher. With regard to scoring, I know OMB and DFC are in touch and hoping to come forward with compromised language. There are different views on that, of course, up here on the Hill and within the administration. But it would be extremely important that something be achieved in that regard, not least because even though we want to see DFC grow and know it needs to grow, particularly in light of geopolitical competition and in light of the infrastructure and other needs around the world, everything comes out of the same pot of resource-constrained money. And so fundamentally, a scoring fix would also be very advantageous for us being able to grow our public-private partnerships, our economic growth programming, our efforts to help countries deal with debt that they've incurred through working with the PRC.
And I think the issue is the way it's scored by OMB, it doesn't take into account the return on the investment that they get per dollar. And I know the ranking member and I are in agreement on this. I've been talking to Senator Coons on the Senate side, and we are working in a bipartisan way like we normally do on this committee to reform this so it can work the way that Congress envisioned it to work. And I appreciate your candor on this, and it'll be helpful in terms of final passage.